I'm Claire Dool, and I'm delighted to be your Master of Ceremonies for the 2021 European Forum for Disaster Risk Reduction. And I'm honoured to give the floor to His Excellency, the Minister of Home Affairs of Portugal, Mr. Eduardo Cabrita.
Thank you very much, Claire. Good morning to all of you. Bom dia, dobre utra, using our three official language. Bonjour, cher ami, using our official language in this seminar. From now, I ask you, I'm going, as you understand, for the reasons you should understand, I'm going to speak in Portuguese, and I ask you to use your phones for translation. Para Portugal, a realização deste Fórum Europeu sobre a redução de riscos de desastre é um momento de importantíssima relevância política e de reafirmação do nosso compromisso com este combate global. E por isso, bem-vindos a Portugal, bem-vindos à magnífica cidade de Matosinhos, que aqui nos acolhe, saudando a Presidente de Câmara, que foi decisiva na organização deste evento. A decisão de realizar este evento em Portugal foi tomada em 2018 na Suíça. Foi aí que Portugal se apresentou como candidato à organização deste evento. E não podíamos, na altura, antecipar quanto a evolução da realidade tornaria ainda mais importante a sua realização do que então prevíamos. Aquilo que são riscos globais, de que a pandemia Covid-19 é o maior exemplo jamais antecipado em qualquer estudo de planeamento estratégico, jamais antecipado por nenhuma organização internacional, jamais antecipado por nenhum governo, prova como a prevenção, a preparação, o trabalho global é a única forma de respondermos a riscos que não têm resposta à escala de Portugal, não têm resposta mesmo à escala europeia, exigem uma resposta global. E por isso é tão importante termos aqui hoje as Nações Unidas presentes e saúdo Mami Missoroti como representante do Secretário-Geral das Nações Unidas, a Comissão Europeia e saúdo o Comissário Janez Lenarčič, os colegas membros de governos de países integrantes do Conselho da Europa, da área europeia das Nações Unidas em torno deste tema. Portugal está habituado a estar no centro da atenção em torno deste tema. No século XVIII, em 1755, Portugal sofreu um terremoto de grandes dimensões que destruiu totalmente a nossa capital. Voltaire, um grande pensador francês, visitou Lisboa pouco depois disso. E, no seu livro, Cândido, explica aquilo que é o choque de ter visto Portugal destruído. E essa mensagem de Voltaire, no século das luzes, chegou a toda a Europa a propósito daquilo que foi um acontecimento de grande dimensão no século XVIII. Novamente, em 2017, Portugal sofreu incêndios rurais de grande dimensão que provocaram mais de 100 de mortos. Essa tragédia nacional determinou uma mudança profunda na resposta, uma concentração em políticas inovadoras de combate aos incêndios rurais, mas também foi o pretexto para uma profunda mudança a nível europeu. Com a Comissão Europeia, então com o Comissário Christos Stylianides, trabalhamos na reforma do Rescue e na criação de um novo mecanismo europeu de proteção civil e desde então, agora com o Comissário Janez Lenarčič, temos vindo a trabalhar no robustecimento do sistema europeu de proteção civil. É por isso que, para um país como Portugal, temos um compromisso com estes temas e sentimos, como se fossem uma questão nossa, as inundações que afetaram este ano a Alemanha, a Bélgica, a Holanda, com um número significativo de vítimas, ou os incêndios que marcaram este ano a Grécia, a Itália, a Turquia, também com uma dimensão de vítimas muito significativa. Mas talvez a pandemia, na sua dimensão, é o maior desafio que nos obriga a uma resposta global. E por isso o lema desta reunião, Prevenção salva vidas, é aqui uma dimensão essencial. E o compromisso de Matosinhos que vamos adotar em torno deste compromisso dos Estados sobre prevenção é um elemento essencial da nossa estratégia. Portugal, no quadro da utilização de mecanismos de financiamento europeu, coloca a proteção civil no centro das suas prioridades, quer no plano de recuperação e resiliência, já aprovado pela Comissão Europeia, que coloca na política da floresta e na política de proteção civil recursos muito significativos, mobilizando meios para a aquisição de meios aéreos, para combate a incêndios, para novas estruturas de coordenação na resposta à proteção civil. Para nós, esta foi uma prioridade no âmbito do nosso plano de recuperação e resiliência. Mas, igualmente, no novo quadro financeiro 2030, Portugal volta a colocar uma dimensão muito significativa de meios aí no apoio às estruturas locais, às estruturas que, a nível local, nas cidades, quer das áreas urbanas, em programas de resiliência urbana, quer das áreas rurais, em programas de segurança em espaço rural, são essenciais para prevenir, para nos prepararmos para ter resultados que estejam à altura das expectativas dos nossos cidadãos. O quadro de Sendai veio aqui fazer a diferença. É um quadro que vai até 2030. Estamos a meio deste período e Portugal tem um compromisso com os objetivos de Sendai e está disponível para ter um papel ativo neste processo. É em torno disso que iremos hoje aqui discutir. Queria, sem antecipar o nosso debate na fase seguinte, queria dar-lhes as boas-vindas a Portugal, as boas-vindas a Matosinhos e reafirmar o compromisso de Portugal com este objetivo global de salvar vidas, de prevenir, de trabalharmos em conjunto para uma melhor resposta global. Большое спасибо. Thank you very much. Muito obrigado.
I would now like to invite Ms. Mami Mitsutori, the Special Representative of the UN Secretary-General for Disaster Risk Reduction, to deliver the message sent by the UN Secretary-General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, for the European Forum for Disaster Risk Reduction 2021.
Thank you very much. Minister Eduardo Cabrita, Minister for Home Affairs of Portugal, Mr. Benedetto della Vedova, Under-Secretary of State of External Affairs of Italy, Mr. Janis Lenarčič, European Union Commissioner for Crisis Management, and Madame Luis Salgueiro, Mayor of the City of Matosinhos. Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor for me to be here today to share the duties of opening this European Forum for Disaster Risk Reduction with my fellow distinguished people. And I would like to now share with you the message of the Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Antonio Guterres, sent to this conference. This European Forum for Disaster Risk Reduction comes at an important moment in the aftermath of COP26 in Glasgow. While disaster risk reduction covers hazards that go beyond climate, it is clear that the world will live with extreme weather events for generations to come. Disasters will be more frequent and intense, and the most vulnerable bear a disproportionate burden. The choice we make or fail to make today could result in a breakdown to a world of climate chaos and perpetual crisis, or a breakthrough to a greener, better, safer future. Many countries in your region have already committed to net zero emission by 2050, but this is just the first step. It is now essential that your region demonstrates leadership on risk reduction, resilience, and sustainability. Prevention saves lives and money. The COVID-19 pandemic, for example, could have been mitigated by an investment of billions instead of response which is costing trillions of dollars. To build a safer world for all, leaving no one behind, we must scale up investments in resilience and in risk analysis. At the United Nations, we will link the strength of our disaster risk reduction framework with a new complex risk analytics fund for a better disaster prevention, anticipation, and response. The regional risk reduction forums, now taking place all over the world, underline the importance of international solidarity and cooperation to prevent and mitigate risks. They will provide important contributions for the midterm review of the Sendai Framework and next year's Global Platform for Disaster Risk Reduction. I wish you every success in your deliberations. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was the message from the Secretary General. And I would like to continue to express our thanks of UNDRR to the government of Portugal for hosting us at this challenging time when Europe is once more at the epicenter of the COVID-19 pandemic, a disaster unlike any other so far this century. I would also like to acknowledge the strong collaboration in support of the European Commission and the Council of Europe. The priority we give to disaster risk reduction speaks volumes about how strong the support is for disaster risk governance across the region. And I would also like to reiterate our gratitude to the mayor of this wonderful city for your warm and gracious hospitality. The inclusion of the countries of Central Asia in this forum shows an outstanding commitment to regional cooperation to build resilience to disasters beyond the borders of Europe. This is the first gathering of its kind following COP26 at Glasgow, where the region was well represented and pushed hard for a greater commitment in both mitigation and adaptation. The Glasgow conference did more to inject risk and resilience into the climate action debate than any previous COP. COP26 has steered us towards the conclusion that we can hold out some hope of keeping to the target of 1.5-degree increase of global warming if we can raise levels of ambition further. This region is probably the safest place on Earth to live in view of its high standards for disaster risk management and the competence of national disaster management agencies. Nonetheless, news has been filled in recent years, even in this region, with scenes of unprecedented disasters. These have included devastating heat waves and wildfires from the Arctic Circle to the Mediterranean, very well eloquently described by the minister already. Storms, extreme rainfall events, and floods have also taken many lives and washed away roads and flooded city streets and washed away livelihoods. On the edge of Europe, hurricanes have wreaked havoc. There has also been several reminders of the ever-present threat of systemic risk in the form of earthquakes and active volcanoes near highly populated areas, as we have seen most recently in Las Palmas, Spain. And this has all been happening along with almost 2 million cases of COVID-19 reported in Europe at the beginning of this month, the most since the pandemic started. This coincides with the launch across Europe and Central Asia of the Prevention Saves Lives campaign. This message cannot be underestimated given the current state of the world. Enhanced public understanding of the systemic nature of risk, disaster risk that surrounds us, and how these risk drivers, global warming, poverty, inequality, land use, and ecological breakdown, how they interact to amplify the impact of any natural or man-made hazard is essential to changing our attitudes and behaviors. It is time to look at disaster resilience as an investment and not a cost, and as the Minister has already mentioned, prevention is the key word. I am pleased to see the attention and commitment of governments in Europe and Central Asia to tackle these issues. I look forward to the outcome of the Ministerial Roundtable, which is also organized under the theme of Prevention Saves Lives. The Ministerial pledge to implement the new EF DRR roadmap and to include a broad range of stakeholders. This will help to accelerate implementation of the Sendai framework in the region and beyond. I'm sure that the increasingly systemic nature of risk will surface during this Ministerial Roundtable. This will be an important opportunity to hear what lessons have been learned at the highest level of government on how to tackle the chronic level of underinvestment in disaster risk reduction as revealed by the pandemic and the climate emergency. This forum will also provide important inputs to the midterm review of the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, which has just started. And it is my hope that the region is also ready to make a significant contribution to the global platform for disaster risk reduction, which will be hosted by the Indonesian government next year in May. And I look forward to many of you there. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for those remarks from the UN Secretary General and from Ms. Mitsutori. I'm now pleased to be joined virtually by the Under-Secretary of State of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Italy, Mr. Benedetto della Vedova. Italy, you will recall, hosted the last European Forum for Disaster Risk Reduction. Mr. della Vedova, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished representatives, it's a great pleasure for me to be here today. I wish to express my gratitude to the government of Portugal and to the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction for the organization of such a significant event in a very difficult situation due to the COVID limitations. Portugal, as well as Italy, are countries prone to natural disasters, and therefore we unfortunately share a common history of catastrophes and lessons learned. Let me mention the 1755 Great Lisbon earthquake, a major earthquake which struck the Portuguese coast on the morning of the 1st November 1755. Approximately 40 minutes after the earthquake, a tsunami hit the harbor and downtown area. In the 1908, southern Italy was affected by a similar multi-risk disaster, the Messina earthquakes. And since then, our countries experience other systemic disasters as well as natural and man-made calamities. Italy strongly believes that prevention and preparedness are key enablers for building resilience to disasters, and it has been investing for several years in this field with an intersectoral and multi-risk approach. In this context, Italy had the honor to organize the previous European Forum for Disaster Risk Reduction, hosted in Rome on the 21-23 November 2018. The forum focused on the reviewed progress made thus far by the European region with regard to the implementation of the Sendai framework. The Rome Forum saw the participation of over 700 delegates, and it was introduced by Italy's former Prime Minister and by the Special Representative of Secretary General for Disaster Risk Reduction, Ms. Mami Mitsuri, our guiding force and light in this challenging path. At the Rome Forum, all participants agreed, and this is a key result, that building resilience to disasters requires strong political will and leadership, as well as a shared responsibility by governments, the private sector, civil society, and single individuals. Many European regions have been frequently and severely struck by natural disasters that highlighted the socioeconomic vulnerability of the affected territories and the incremental trend of hazards connecting to rising global temperatures. As unanimously recognized on the occasion of the recent COP26, co-chaired by UK and Italy, climate change is indeed the most pressing global issue on which countries must act now. The targets are ambitious and time is of essence, but as the pandemic taught us, no country can save itself alone. Effective multilateral cooperation is essential to face global threats, as climate-related natural disasters. We must focus our efforts on the systematic exchange of knowledge, experience, and best practices to safeguard the lives of our citizens and to preserve the environment. I believe this forum is an important occasion to favor advances in a common strategy against natural and man-made risks in a moment when the pandemic and climate change urge us to turn our commitments into action. Thank you for your attention.
I'm now pleased to invite Mr. Janusz Lenarčič, the European Union Commissioner for Crisis Management and member of the EF DRR Secretariat, to give his opening remarks.
Thank you, Claire. Excellencies, dear colleagues, it's a great pleasure to be here with you at this forum. And my special thanks go to Portugal for hosting this event in this beautiful city of Matosinhos. As Secretary General of the UN just mentioned through Mrs. Mizuturi to us, it's very timely that we are meeting just after COP26. And I think that the UN summit in Glasgow left no one in doubt. Climate disruption is happening now and everywhere. And extreme weather events are increasing in their severity and frequency. And with each degree of warming, the world is seeing more and more complex disaster risks. It is sufficient to look back at this summer's floods and wildfires that affected our continent so that we can see clearly that the impact of climate change is tangible, is close to our homes, and it is terribly disruptive. And it is adding to the difficulties we have already been facing this year and previous year with the pandemic that has put our resilience to a very, very difficult test. And it still continues to today. Of course, there is no silver bullet against all these crises, but we can and we must foster prevention, as Minister Cabrita said. We have to enhance preparedness and we have to reduce the risks. And we need to do this now. And we need to do it together. Over the years, the European Union Civil Protection Mechanism, the UCPM, has provided essential support to millions of people with urgent and vital needs, not only on the European continent, but globally. And the UCPM truly represents the EU solidarity at its best. We have been strengthening and will continue to strengthen this mechanism to make it future-proof by, for example, improving scenario planning and early warning systems, by reinforcing response capacity and so on. An important strand of our work will involve the preparation of the union-wide resilience goals. These goals will serve as our internal compass to direct our efforts on prevention, on preparedness, and especially vis-à-vis large-scale transboundary threats like the ongoing pandemic. When I stressed that we need to work together, I meant not only among us, but also together with nature. We know nature is our first ally to reduce disaster risks. Healthy and biodiverse ecosystems represent our best insurance policy against future risks. And I'm proud to be part of the EU leadership on climate action and environmental protection. Guided by the European Green Deal, we are striving to pave the way for a climate-neutral and resilient future for all. With our ambitious climate agenda, we work on reducing global warming and thus on preventing future climate impacts. In parallel, we are strengthening adaptation and disaster risk reduction, fostering nature-based solutions, and protecting our environment. Most importantly, equal efforts and commitments are devoted to international cooperation and global action on climate and disaster risk reduction. The Sendai framework remains our shared blueprint for reducing disaster risk and to build social resilience. In these crucial years, from now until 2030, there are a number of actions that we consider key. I will talk more about this during the ministerial roundtable, but please allow me to stress just a few just now. I see as paramount to enhance our understanding of the new disaster risk landscape and consequently to improve the way we manage these risks in the short and long term and strengthen our preparedness. This work needs to be based on disaster risk assessments, taking account of the best available information and high-quality data. We also need to enhance risk awareness across all strands of society, civil, business, and government, of course, too. In parallel, developing additional resources remains a key priority. The economic argument for investing in prevention is clear. According to the World Bank, every euro invested in prevention can potentially yield up to 12 euro in economic benefits. These are areas where cooperation across regions and various stakeholders can be an important enabler. In closing, ladies and gentlemen, I'm really looking forward to today's discussions, to listen to your experiences, to lessons learned, and solutions for disaster risks. Together, we can open new avenues of cooperation, we can chart an ambitious path towards a more resilient and sustainable future. And once again, thank you, and I wish all of us fruitful and inspiring discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lenarčič. It's now my great pleasure to share with you a video message from the Deputy Secretary General of the Council of Europe, Mr. Bjorn Berger.
Minister for Home Affairs of Portugal, ministers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. At this moment, in the wake of COP26 in Glasgow, the need for urgent action to protect our environment is evident. So too is public demand for it. Here in the Council of Europe, we share that impetus for action. Among the initiatives we are taking is the negotiation and design of new recommendations or binding legal texts on the environment and human rights. An approach that was endorsed by our foreign ministers at our Hamburg ministerial session in May earlier this year. But it is equally important to use the effective tools that are already at our disposal. These include the European Court of Human Rights judgments that relate to the environment and that must, like all of its case law, be implemented by every member state. Also, our Parliamentary Assembly has recently adopted a range of important political resolutions and recommendations on the environment and climate change. And we also have our specific environment-related conventions that address issues such as the challenges facing Europe's wildlife, natural habitats, and landscape. Then, of course, there is Europa, Major Hazards Partial Agreement. Since it was set up almost 35 years ago, this has provided a platform for practical cooperation in the field of major natural and other disasters. Its approach to disaster risk reduction involves prevention, protection against risks and better preparedness where disasters occur. But it is not static. Rather, and to the credit of its members, the platform continues to evolve. Its medium-term plan is a case in point. This will run for the next 4 years and most importantly adopts a human rights-based, community-led approach to ensuring the protection of the most vulnerable groups in relation to disasters. The specific new measures it proposes include drafting a recommendation on the greater use of various media to support national measures for risk reduction, the promotion of user-friendly systems, cost-effective technologies, and sharing of experience from policies, plans, and measures, and mainstreaming disaster risk assessments in land use policy. Implementing these measures will no doubt help to meet the 7 global targets set out in the United Nations Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, and also contribute to implementing its 2030 Agenda and Sustainable Development Goals too. So, the positive progress enabled by this platform is both European and global in its nature. Separately, I also want to highlight and commend ministers on adopting 2 very important recommendations. These aim for the inclusion of migrants, asylum seekers, and refugees, and enabling and protecting persons with disabilities before, during, and after public health emergencies resulting from viral or other pandemics. Given the lessons that we have learned about the particular exposure of vulnerable groups during the COVID-19 pandemic, these recommendations are particularly pertinent. I congratulate the platform members for their dynamic approach and their determination to also protect those most in need. My thanks go to you and to Minister Eduardo Cabrita for hosting this forum, and the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction for its organizational input. And I wish you all success in your work to build ever more resilient responses in light of disasters and other large-scale emergencies. We need you. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. I'm now delighted to give the floor to our host, Ms. Luisa Salgueiro, Mayor of Matosinhos, host city of this 2021 European Forum for Disaster Risk Reduction. Please do come up on stage for your remarks if you would like to. Otherwise, please sit there.
Thank you. Good morning, Your Excellencies, distinguished participants. I would like to welcome to you all to our city of Matosinhos, particularly our Home Affairs Minister Eduardo Cabrita, Mrs. Mami Mizuturi, and Commissioner Yanis Lenarzic, and all the participants in this forum. It's a great honor for us to receive different international delegations here in Matosinhos, the coastal city of design, Pritzker Architecture Prizes, and of the world's best fish. The city of Matosinhos is in a potentially very high-risk situation. An airport, a seaport, a fuel logistic park, several highways, and a cargo rail line cause thousands of hazardous materials to circulate daily. In addition to these day-to-day concerns, for which we work with the 4 local fire brigades to efficiently respond to the challenge of protecting people and goods, global concerns about climate change have risen in the last few years. Climate change has increased the incidence of weather-related catastrophes, such as fire or flood disasters that occur all over the place. That is why Matosinhos intends to be one of the first 100 European cities to be carbon neutral by 2030. For that, we are a technological-free zone, having tested solutions that improved our quality of life and have invested in a plan to combat climate change. The main topic to emphasize is that prevention assumes a prominent role. Prevention is not only reflected in the tangible, but also in the everyday effort in the social dimension, the integration of migrant communities in order to minimize extreme violence, enhancing the democracy. Matosinhos is home of more than 100 nationalities, and all citizens are well integrated in the community with the support of a migrant local plan. Democracy is a cornerstone for the protection of the rule of law. The institutional crisis increases the climate of fear and disrespect for the rule of law, and stronger institutions promote a sense of greater security in the citizens. The local and regional authorities should contribute to minimize the social, ethnic, gender, or sexual discrimination and encourage more resilient regions. My hope is that the outcome of this forum will be a more united and cohesive Europe, because many of the risks that we have been facing in Matosinhos are no different scenarios from other medium and large cities. That is why we are so honored to host this forum here today. Thank you for your attention.
And thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I would now like to officially open the forum. I'd like to invite His Excellency Minister Mr. Eduardo Cabrita and the Special Representative of the UN Secretary-General for Disaster Risk Reduction, Ms. Mami Mitsutori, to strike the EF DRR gavel.